is Joy Harrington. I am your host. Let's talk. So, a lot of the work that I do is helping people heal their inner child, change patterns, get out of their own way, right? A lot of people that come to me are aware of the work that they want to do inside of them to help them grow, to help them heal, to help them change, right? They've already become aware of their self sabotage, their limiting behaviors, mostly because a lot of the content that I speak on is showing them how it's showing up in their everyday life with like lack of confidence, lack of clarity, lack of libido, um, not being able to show up from a healthy place. And so you're constantly on this search for more, and never feeling fulfilled, right? I talk about a lot of these like issues in their daily life and show them how it all comes back to what's going on inside. So when they come to me, they're already aware it's inside stuff that they're wanting to work on. And something that comes up consistently as a theme is also most of them are parents, right? Most of them have kids and they want to help their kids grow up not having the same issues that they have. I'm in the same boat. I'm a parent. I'm wanting to raise my children differently so that they can be in a better place and further along than I was when I hit adulthood and had to kind of go digging and figure this out for myself. So today, I want to help you do that with your kids. And I don't think it has to be complicated at all. We want to help our children and set them up for success in order to help them actually handle and deal with their trauma, their limiting beliefs, their stories, their fears, right? All of that. We can't prevent them from taking those things on. We can definitely make a difference. We can definitely do things differently than our parents did. And maybe it won't be as traumatic, or maybe it won't be the same kind of trauma or the same kind of story. But the way the human brain is wired, they are going to grow up with trauma. They're going to grow up with stories in their head about themselves, their worthiness, all of that, because it's just how the brain is wired. The brain is wired to survive. And so it's going to work that way in order, it's going to look at the external circumstances, the situation, whatever, and it's going to make up a story about itself. One, because it's wired that way. Two, because kids only have an emotional brain until they're 7. And that's their subconscious, right? So their subconscious is running the show until they're 7. And then when they're 7, they have their intellectual brain start developing, but it doesn't finish till they're 25. So I'm going to give you 2 things. I'm going to give you 2 things today to help you set up your kids for success. We can't prevent it, but we can help them in changing their stories, even from a young age. We can help them in walking through and processing things, even from a very young age. So here's 2 questions that you get to ask your kids to help them so that they won't get stuck in these. The first question is, what did you learn about yourself today? Also, that's just a great question for conversation with our kids, right? But asking them, what did you learn about yourself today, is going to teach them how to start observing themselves. Observing yourself, observing your own thoughts, observing your own patterns, observing your own behaviors, observing what's going on inside of you is awareness. And if we can set them up to have awareness within themselves, we've already won the battle. People who are not aware of what's going on, or the thought that's running the show, right? Or the fear that's actually underneath that self-sabotaging behavior, right? If they're not aware of that, they can't change anything. They can't create a new pattern. They can't lean into something different. And so just teaching our kids how to be aware of themselves is already going to set them up to win. So we do that by asking them, what did you learn about yourself today? Because they will have to start observing themselves. You know what? I learned that I don't like this, or I do like that, or I learned that this makes me really angry, or I learned, right? It's going to start pretty basic, but we can help them begin to peel that onion and go deeper with it the older they get, to where they can learn about themselves, that when someone says this, it actually triggers this fear in them, or it triggers this whatever in them. That's huge. Number 2 is, what is the story you're telling yourself? This is a question I've just started talking about with my kids. And a couple weeks ago, they were both basically like bickering with each other. And I basically helped both of them see that it wasn't the other person that was actually making them upset. It was the story they were telling themselves about the other person, right? The inner dialogue based on what they had seen from the other person, they made up some inner dialogue, making that person's behavior mean something that it didn't actually mean. And then they're upset at that person. So you can say, what's the story you're telling yourself? You could ask it this way. What are you making it mean? That might be a little hard for kids, right? But when I say, what's the story you're telling yourself? It's like, what are you thinking about that? When someone says this, what do you think about that? That will help them start recognizing that it's not what the person said or did. It's literally the thought they have about what the person said or did that's causing this reaction inside of them. And again, that walks hand in hand with awareness. So we're teaching them how to observe themselves, how to observe their thoughts, how to observe their patterns, their behaviors. And then we're also teaching them in that observation, what are you making it mean? What is the story you're telling yourself? What assumptions are there? Because that story determines everything. That story determines your belief. That story determines how you see that person or that situation. It determines the fear that you have about it, right? If you had a completely different story about it, you would feel completely differently. You would act completely differently. Those two questions are going to set your kids up for success. If we could raise a generation of kids that knew how to ask themselves these questions, we would have a completely different world that we're living in. Most adults don't even know how to ask themselves these questions. So major props to you. If you know how to ask yourself that question and come up with your own answers and observe yourself, and then you also get to pass that on to your kids. Heck, make it a family conversation at dinner. In fact, now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm going to make this a family conversation at dinner for our family, because these are amazing questions that we all get to ask ourselves. And when we do, we get to realize the power we have in a situation, the power we have over our perspective, the power we have over our actions, over our feelings, over the beliefs that we're taking on. It all comes back to those two questions. So I hope this helped you today. Go tag me on Instagram and tell me how your conversation with your kids went. I totally want to hear how these went with your kids and what you're hearing from them and how it's helping you even learn something about yourself, because we learn so much from our kids about ourselves. And when we get to watch our kids walk through this with us, it's so beautiful. It's so heartwarming. And it really feels like we're doing our job as a parent. So I'm so proud of you for being here. Send this to someone else who loves it and needs it. I'll see you back on the show next time.